And we're live. Welcome back to the Daily Yapper, or if you're on YouTube, it is the Football Tactics. Now, if you are new to this channel, I greatly appreciate if you comment anything you think about what's going on currently in the Premier League news, because there are a few things currently that are going on now, and you're on YouTube. The things I'm going to be talking about today: Levy Colwell, big injury for Chelsea. Chelsea obviously have to figure out what they're going to be doing with this player injury now. Sesko to Manchester United. It seems like we got the here we go. We are going to dive into how important that is for Manchester United. Newcastle, we need to talk about how terrible this transfer window has been, because obviously they continue to keep struggling. And then we're going to talk about Arsenal, which they've been struggling the preseason. Now, if you have been watching my channel before, I talk about preseason. I'm not going to lose sleep over preseason, but we still need to dive into it, because there might be some mental things that are going on right now with Arsenal, with the friendlies that have been happening. And then obviously Tottenham. We need to talk about Tottenham too, because they were dealt with a big blow too with the injury to Madison. Sung is now left, and Solanke is out right now with injury. Kulusevski. So they're missing quite a few key players, and the leadership might be lacking in the first handful of weeks. So let's dive into the topics we have here. So, what do you think about Baliba and United? I think Baliba would be a good signing for Manchester United. I think they're trying to quote for 120 million though, so that seems a bit steep if I'm not going to lie. But if you look at Manchester United's lineup right now, they are lacking in the CDM role for the most part. Once upon a time in America, yes, once upon a time in America, but Baliba by himself, I think, could really upgrade the midfield for United. Right now, they're currently dealing with Ugarte, and I don't think he's the guy they can really rely on for the upcoming season. Now, maybe he's still a great player. He obviously played well for Ruben at Sporting, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm thinking the right player, and he did well before, but once he came to United, hasn't been the player that they were expecting when they bought this. Casemiro is getting older. His legs aren't there anymore. So, like I said, they definitely need to go for someone. And I think Baliba, if they can get him this window, they can solidify. Because if they wait for next transfer window, whether it's in January or the next following season, so many clubs are going to be going for him. This is the only time I think United can actually get him currently, unless somehow miraculously they win the Premier League, then possibly they can get him. But right now would be the making most sense for them to sign him, because if they can solidify buying him, yes, I understand 120 is a lot of money, but then they can have him for 8 to 10 years, and they're going to obviously do well with this player. And let's be real here. We have to give credit to Brighton. They are such a great club when it comes to picking players out and knowing great players. And pretty much every player that's been sold from Brighton to go on to another Premier League team has done very well. I mean, look at Moise Caicedo, look at McAllister. I would argue Sanchez, but I can understand people are not going to be on the Sanchez. You look at Cucurella, and I'm just trying to think. There's been a few other players that have moved on, and they just always find people. Rice deserves Rice deserves a Ballon d'Or nomination. I see David went and saw my video earlier. I don't think he did. Now, do I think he's going to be in the top 10? No, he's not going to be in the top 10. But like I said, if you look at the midfield from Liverpool, every Liverpool midfielder is better than Rice from last year. So, and like I said, we only saw McAllister, and we could have seen every midfielder, by the way. Let me see here. I don't think Son went to MLS. I don't know if you saw, Bobby, the video of someone from LA, which again, I was probably going to make a video about this. They were talking about Humane Son possibly winning the World Cup for United States. This was why I understand why people hate Americans when we talk about football, because we got people talking about Human Son winning the World Cup for the U.S., which obviously he plays for South Korea, and I don't know why that was the talking point for it. But speaking of him, though, he does make a huge difference for Tottenham, though, and I know that's one of the topics here, because like we just said a little bit earlier, with Son out now, with Madison, with the ACL injury, that's a massive blow for them. Solanke's out for, I think, right now for the first match. Maybe he's match fit by the first match, but it's going to be up in the air. You look at Kulusevski as well. They have some big injuries going on, and obviously their back line could always get hit with an ACL injury at any point. VDV, Romero also have multiple injuries from last year. So, like I said, Tottenham could struggle right off the bat, which I think Thomas Frank can really steer the ship in the correct direction. But without having the proper leadership, it could be a little difficult for them. So therefore, again, I think they may have to go out and buy a few extra players this year or this summer. I think Tottenham weren't planning on buying more players, but now with the injury to Madison, they have to go and buy another player. And I think Richarlison is going to be leaving as well. I don't know where Richarlison's going, but rumors are that he will be leaving. Maybe that's going to be going to Newcastle. We will talk about that in just a second. But like I said, Tottenham definitely need to buy a few more players. They need more depth, because if they pick up any quick injuries, they cannot have Archie Gray as a CB once again in their back line unless they plan on finishing in the bottom half of the table. Then they can clearly do that. Let me see what you guys have saying here, though. Barco, I'm not sure. Romero will be captain. Yeah, Romero will be captain. Yes, I agree with that. But I'm just saying Romero being injured, possibly, like I said, he's picked up so many hamstring injuries. I wouldn't doubt that he could possibly pick up another injury at any given point. And so, like I said, if he picks up an injury, now you're passing it down to another player, and that's when it gets very difficult if you're going down the chain of link for who's going to be your captain, because you need that player that can step up and really lead the team. And yes, I do believe Romero can do that. But if he does get hurt, I'm just looking around at the rest of the players that they have there. Bentancur possibly could pick up the captain's band, but I wouldn't really rely on him as well. Solaki would make sense, but like I said, he's possibly injured. Brendan Johnson seems a little too young, but like I said, he could possibly do it for them too. So that being said, I do think they have a few options, but they could still struggle because of that. Newcastle's window would have been better if they got rid of Isak. I mean, here's the thing with Newcastle that we obviously want to jump into is how many players they've missed out on. And we will get to Sesko in just a second, because if you look at all the players currently in this transfer window, Newcastle had many players on their list that they wanted to go for. And yet somehow they have not signed anyone besides Alanga for Newcastle. And when they signed Alanga, that was like their first signing. I thought for sure Newcastle was going to be doing something crazy this summer in this transfer window, because with Alanga, with Isak, and then the possibility of signing a few other players, but they have not been able to do anything besides Ramsdale. And now you think about if Isak does go, they've lost out another striker, and they could have went for Darwin Nunez. Again, you can say what you want about Darwin Nunez, but I do think he would have been a good gamble for Newcastle for 54 million. He went to the Saudi Arabia League. I think there is still a good player in Darwin Nunez. Now, is he as good as Isak? No, I don't think he is, but he's still way more affordable than they're going to have to go for any other striker right now for Newcastle. But obviously, he's now going to the Saudi Arabia League. That leaves Nico Jackson as an option for Newcastle. Do I think they go for him? Maybe, but then they have to spend at least 80 to 90 million, where they could have spent it on someone else. There's maybe a few different strikers they can go for, but this is the problem for them. If they do keep Isak, that obviously gives them a better opportunity to compete for everything. But from what it sounds like, Isak is not kicking the ball ever again for Newcastle. It seems like he's going to be going to Liverpool. They're just trying to go back and forth on the amount of money that they do need. It's going to be probably like around 130 to 140. Maybe it does go all the way up to 150, but I can't imagine it goes that high. Obviously, Liverpool will benefit massively by having Isak, and they'll be front runners to win the Premier League. Do you support Chelsea? Yes, I support Chelsea here, which is why we talk about Chelsea, but I like to have a few other things. Opinions on Burnley. I mean, Burnley have made a few good signings. I guess we can obviously talk about different teams. I'll get to Sesko and how many goals he'll score, but Burnley, they've made a few good signings so far. I think they can make a few more. Margu is a good, I think, striker for them for, I think, what they are having on a loan. They obviously brought in the leadership with Kyle Walker. I wanted to say Trippier. I knew that wasn't right. Kyle Walker, which I don't know how well Kyle Walker will still be. He might be past his age. I mean, he's really relying on his pace, and he's not the guy he used to be when he played for Tottenham, when he played for City. It's not the same guy, but maybe he can still turn around for maybe a season or two. So Burnley obviously are trying to adjust to the players that they want for the Premier League, but I still think they will struggle this upcoming season. So Broya has signed for 20 million, Ugochukwu for 25 million. Burnley. Oh yeah, so that's right. They signed those guys too. Ugochukwu, I think, is going to be a very good signing actually for them. I'm probably going to pick him up in my fantasy league. So they have obviously done well with that. But let's go to United here. I want to talk about Manchester United for just a second. Obviously, if you guys put some comments, I'll come back to those comments or try to come back to those comments. But I think this is going to be a massive upgrade for United. Now, obviously, they were going for multiple strikers. They landed on Sesko. They could have maybe went for a different player. I think Ekatike would have been a better option prior to everything that's been going on. But going for Sesko is still a good sign, because now they're probably going to run a 1-2-1 at top. Bruno Fernandes can be sit behind Mbomo and Cunha on those kind of wingish positions. And then you're going to have Sesko right on top. I do think they still keep Højlund as well. It makes sense to keep him, even though they're trying to sell him for 40 million. But with all the competition, well, I'm joking here, they only have one game a week, but I do think they still need depth because, like I said, I think everyone last year at United just looked so bad. You have to give maybe Hoyland one more season to again maybe push Sesko. And I think Xerxes is a good player as well. But like I said, you have to have a few different players because they still have the FA Cup, they still have the League Cup, so they're gonna have to rotate a few different players. But he, I think, will score. I'm gonna go probably above 15 in the Premier League. Overall, I think he scores 20. So some League Cups, FA, I think he scores 20 overall. Maybe picks up a few assists, but I mean that's not his main role. The main role will be the scoring goals. So I think it's a very good signing. And obviously Bruno Fernandes is going to benefit massively with all the signings they've had. Think about what Bruno Fernandes had to deal with last season, who he was playing the ball with, and who he was trying to have score. Hoyland was terrible. Xerxes was horrible. I'm trying to think if Jane Sancho even kicked the ball last year for United, but I don't think he did. But you're just thinking some of the other players he was playing the ball to. Now he has Cunha, who obviously can score goals, and Bomo can score goals, and Sesko can score goals. The man's probably going to rack up a bunch of assists coming up, and he can score goals himself. So overall, big signings for United. I think they are only missing really a CDM now. They do have Ugarte, but I don't know if that's the guy they're gonna have to really rely on because Manu in the midfield makes sense. Mason Mount somehow could still fit into the system. I'm not sure exactly what again Ruben's gonna really do for tactic wise. They have multiple different options for like a CAM or Cam, but like I said, Bruno Fernandes is obviously the heavy favorite. But Mason Mount could still be a good shout at some points. Amato in the wing, and even their defense is pretty good. I think the Ligt did fairly decent last year, but I think he's gonna be better again this year. You're looking at Euro, who's coming back from an injury from last season, so he didn't get a full start with the preseason and everything. He's going to be a good signing. I don't know with Luke Shaw or if they're going to go with Martinez, whoever they're going to go in that left side. But like I said, they have options, so their defense should be pretty good. They're only lacking once in the midfield. Ugarte is not good enough. I agree. Ugarte is not good enough. So Baliba, I think, makes the most sense. It's just difficult to spend 120 million for a guy that's only played what a year, 2 years in the Premier League, and so again, it's a little difficult. Opinions on Garnacho to Chelsea. Garnacho to Chelsea makes sense in my mind. Do I want him to come to Chelsea? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, like I said, we do need depth out on the wing. I know we have Jamie Gittins. We obviously are trying to go for a Xavi Simons, which if we go for Xavi, it doesn't make sense to go for Garnacho, but maybe that is falling through. That's not going to happen. And obviously with Sesko coming to United, RB Leipzig just got hit with a big, they're losing one of their biggest players. Now if they lose Xavi Simons in this transfer window, that's another big blow. So they may not try to sell him. Overall, though, if he does come to Chelsea, I think there is a player there as well. Like I was saying with Darwin Nunez, he's a good player. You obviously have seen him score multiple great goals. He can drive the ball really well. The only issue, it's like what we saw with Noni, is that he keeps his head down all the time. If he can lift his head up and actually looks what's going on and actually finds players around him, he can be a good player and link up play. Like we've seen that with United too. There was a few times that he did 1-2 passes and then curled a goal or a shot in and scored a beautiful goal. So again, there's a good player in that player. Everyone in United just did terrible last year, so I'm not going to really factor in from last year too much for the most part. Ronaldo to Madrid money. I'm not sure what that is for, but Chelsea finish out of the top five. I mean, with Levy Colwell getting hurt now, that is a big blow for Chelsea. I still think they finish in the top four. I'm gonna be a deluded fan and say they still win the Premier League, but that is a heavy blow. But when you look at Chelsea right now, they signed Hatu, which he can play as a left CB. Not that he was signed for; he was signed as Cucurella's backup. But Vega as well is now a player that should be able to step into this role because Shield is also hurt. Not that I think Shield is the same level as Vega or even Colwell, but he is there. He's still out for at least a month, if not two. So because Batty Shield's out for at least a month, we need a guy to step into that position. So again, Vega makes sense. There's been talks with him going to Atletico Madrid, but the problem was is that he didn't have a clear path to play in the starting 11 as a CP. He didn't want to play as a left winger under Cucurella. So like I said, this makes huge sense that he should now stay, push for that position, and actually win that position over because Colwell probably maybe makes it back in 7-8 months. And by that point, it depends where the season's at. But if Vega is doing really well, it makes sense he would keep playing. And then we just throw in Cole every now and then. Unpopular opinion, Newcastle don't get European football. I mean, the way it's been going for Newcastle, I would not be surprised if they do not make European football. This could be a massive downward turn for Newcastle. despite the fact of getting that much money, it's going to be a heavy blow for them because that is a huge goal scoring opportunity. They also sold Colin Wilson, which I don't think it was a bad sell for them because I think it was time for them to move on. He's been injured, but I still think there is a guy that can score goals there too. So for West Ham, it made sense. But Isak leaving, though, leaves a massive hole in them. That being said, Anthony Gordon can still score goals. Alon can still score goals. So whether they do maybe a two up front, they could probably work that out and then also change their tactics a little bit. I'm not sure exactly what Eddie Hull is going to do with that because that is, like I said, a massive blow for them. Cole will be a big loss for us. We need to bring in Bastoni, Murillo, Marque till he's back. Marque makes sense. Yeah, sorry, I got a little off track. So if Vega does not stay, we obviously need to sign a player because we could use Cucurella as that position, but then that really throws off our tactics. Mal Gusto can play as a backup as our left B, but we Mark Gay would make the most sense. And Crystal Palace, not that they really want to sell the player, it makes more sense that they would sell him because in 12 months they're not going to get anything. So if you're looking at PSR or FFP, they get nothing for him. So at least getting 40-ish million makes sense. Now Chelsea do get a kickback because they have a sell-on clause. So whatever we pay for, whether it's 40 million, we're going to get a kickback. I think it's 8 million. I could be mistaken. Not that I know off the top of my head, but still 32 million, let's say, is a massive signing to bring him in. And yes, he would go right in that position, start, and we would definitely be well. And him and Chalobah had a great pairing last year at Crystal Palace. So, like I said, it wouldn't be surprising for us to go to Marque. He is an academy player. We obviously sold him to Crystal Palace. For him to come back makes the most sense. Him and Chalobah, and I think Cucurella could be phenomenal, or even Reece James. All those players in their back line would actually be a solid back line. So, we have the potential to buy him too, so it would make sense. I don't think it's does the trust quality. We have Estavio, Gittins, Neto, and Simmons comes. That's again if Simmons comes. And actually, I missed out what Enzo Maresca said on Estavio today. So I don't know if he said the position he prefers him to play. If that's the case, I should go back and listen to that. But I just assumed he was going to play as a right wing. But the way you're saying it sounds like he may play on the left side. So if that's the case, that would be really interesting to see how that plays out because Cole Palmer might be pushing into that right wing position for Chelsea, which may make it very difficult for us to play anyone else in that right wing position. Midfield wise, I mean, it makes sense. Caicedo, Enzo Fernandez are going to be the two guys always there, but I could definitely see Lavia playing that midfield, Santos as well, and we could still rotate a few different players into that midfield. Anyways, I think Spurs go down this year. I highly doubt Spurs go down. I mean, there's potential, but think about if Spurs are doing this bad come January, they are going to spend a bunch of cash. There's no way Daniel Levy is going to let Spurs ever go down. And say they do go down, they would bounce right back because of how much money they make off other things outside of just Tottenham, which then counts for them to use for the report. So they would just absolutely buy up everything in the championship and come right back up. Do I think they're going to get relegated? Absolutely not. I think the quality of players they have around them is way too good to get relegated for the most part, though. But that being said, I do want to talk about Arsenal here for their friendlies because this is, again, when I talk about friendlies, I don't put too much effort into friendlies because, like we've mentioned before, a friendly, it can go in any directions for the most part. The thing, though, definitely I'm seeing with right now with these friendlies, though, is that Arsenal, the mentality just does not seem to be there. And I could easily see the case being for this is because they have been going hard for the last how many years, finishing second multiple years in a row. And last year, they definitely went on a slight decline. Minus, they obviously got to the semifinals in the Champions League. That's a big step up from what they've done in the Champions League. But in the Premier League itself, they did not do well. FA Cup, I would say they struggled there. And even in the league, they struggled. So League Cup, I'm saying. And therefore, again, there might be a toll on these players right now that they are not seeing how this is going to result for the end of the season under Arteta. If that is the case, this could be the last season for Arteta. Now, do I think if they win something, he'll stay? Yes, obviously. But I have a hard time believing that Arsenal win anything this year. And again, it seems like right now there's just something going on in these friendly matches. And then you even look at they went to the PK shootout just to add salt to injury. They lost the PK shootout. And yes, I mean, it was didn't mean anything, so there's no pressure. But still, the fact that they've now lost, I think, back-to-back friendlies, they've had players that played for them score against them and then also lose a PK shield. It really is going to be difficult for Arsenal for a while. That being said, if they start winning games right off the bat, they shouldn't have to struggle too much. But that's why we put Arsenal worry about the friendlies. They may have one more. So again, if they can turn around, they should be okay. But overall, I think they'll still be okay. What do you think about the lineup tomorrow's Chelsea match? Chelsea's match for their lineup, I think we're going to do a 45-minute like type of rotation. It makes more sense because we do have a game tomorrow. I will do live commentating on Sunday for the AC Milan game. So if you guys want to listen to that, obviously like this. If you're on YouTube, we do it on YouTube as well. But that being said, with the lineup for tomorrow against Bayern Leverkusen, it makes sense we go heavy in the first half, I think, with most of our starting 11. And then at 45 or in the second half, we substitute and bring all the other players on. I would love to see Jamie Gittins, though, get quite a bit of minutes in this match just because we haven't seen him yet play for Chelsea. We weren't able to bring him into the Club World Cup. So this would be a great game just to see how he plays. I think if we're looking at our attacking third, then I think Jamie Gittins, Liam Delap, and then probably Pedro Neto in the front three. And then the midfield, I think, again, we go heavy for the most part. We go Cole Palmer, Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo. Back line, this is where it's a little interesting, but I think we have to go Cucurella, Hato, just because as of right now, we don't have Mark Gahey. So therefore, we have to go with him as a left CB. Then we go with Trevor Chalaba, and then Reece James, and then Sanchez. That'd be my starting 11. I wouldn't be surprised if it does change to something else. But like I said, I think we do go heavy in the match tomorrow for a little bit. Now, Bayern Leverkusen, I think, is a good match for us. But I think AC Milan's going to be a better match. And because it is two games so quickly, we really cannot go too heavy on this. So if we lose these matches, I'm not going to be upset either because we have to worry about the future for the Premier League. Because to play Friday, Sunday, and then come back for another Sunday match against Crystal Palace for our opening match, it's just like I said, we don't have to worry about injuries or have to risk those injuries. We already now have Colwell out, so why risk it and try to go crazy on these friendlies? So, anyways, sorry, I missed some of these comments down here, so I'm seeing what we're seing here. Chelsea's doing the high capital money ball strat. I mean, kind of, yeah. They're definitely going to buy these players for a little bit cheaper and putting them lower wages. But like I said, it does make sense because if you're looking at what Chelsea constantly keep doing now, they're buying these players for a lower fee, putting them on lower weekly salaries, which then makes the incentive for other teams to come and try to buy these players. So if they do work out, we obviously can then raise the price, double, triple what we made off of them. And if they're not doing well, like I'm looking at Kieran Dewsbury Hall, it's a shame because I thought he was going to maybe stay for another season. We broke even with him after 1 year. And whether that's a good thing, bad thing, the fact that we're not really losing any money on him, he won 2 trophies at Chelsea. I think he's going to be a good signing for Everton. So overall, everyone makes sense that we're doing there for the most part. We signed Hato for a reason. Left-footed CB, left back. He's the perfect man for the job. I agree. Hato is possibly the right man for the job. My only concern is just if we start him in game week 1, he's really the only guy we have as our left CB, and he hasn't played in the Premier League. I mean, it's definitely a big step up from Ajax, and he may fit into the system quite well, and there may be no issues. If that's the case, obviously I'm happy and not going to lose any sleep. But if he does have some issues, I'm just thinking some of the players that have come recently signing for Chelsea because again, you're playing for Chelsea. There's a little bit more pressure, not to knock on some of the lower clubs. If you're playing for a smaller club, say like Burnley or something along those lines, and you struggle your first match, people are going to say, oh, it's Burnley. You know what? They're still trying to get into the Premier League itself. But if you play for Chelsea, you have to put in a solid performance right off the bat. And if he doesn't, that could easily hurt his confidence, and then he could struggle some more. And therefore, again, we're going to struggle until Badia Shield comes in. He could possibly come back from injury too quickly, pick up another injury, and therefore, like I said, it could be a rotating cycle for the most part. If that were the case, so like I said, Cucurella could play as our left CP, and like I said, Malgusa could play as our um, left back. But hopefully that's not the case. We don't have to come down to that. So if we don't sign anyone, Hato does make sense. Yeah, what about friendlies? Haven't played first 11, and it's only preseason, but still. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a preseason, so we don't have to go too crazy. And again, that's why I'm saying for Arsenal too, they shouldn't have to worry too much about the friendlies. They should still be scoring more goals, I think. Gyökeres, I think, still needs time to fix or fit into the system for Arteta, but I think he's still going to be a good signing overall. How do you feel about Rio? I think Rio is a pretty good signing for Liverpool. I think he's done well. I'm not sure how many minutes he's actually going to get once the season kicks off, but he could easily be one of those guys coming off the bench and do quite well for Liverpool. So I'm looking forward to. Obviously, I wish he would have stayed at Chelsea, but it is what it is for the most part. Honestly, Newcastle have a comeback window because they have a free run at the Thal right now and Lisa. I have a hard time seeing them going for Visa just because of him being a little bit older, but Brentford, I don't think can sell too many more players. And the reason why is because they've already lost the core team already, plus their manager. To sell Visa, it just doesn't make sense in my mind. And I don't think Brentford's going to lose any sleep if they don't sell him, unless he's trying to push his way out. If Newcastle comes knocking, but honestly, it makes sense for him to stay there. I'm not sure about the other person, but like I said, there's plenty of players out there that Newcastle could go and sign yet. I just don't understand what their tactics are for trying to, I want to say lowball players, but it seems like they're just not putting the amount of money that should be. If a team wants something, just put the money in, get at least a signing done. Because if you were to get maybe one or two signings done, maybe Isaac would have looked at it and said, you know what, we're actually doing stuff to bring players in to make this club better. The fact that they've only brought Alonga in really shows that they really aren't striving to do well this summer. What players do you think Chelsea will sell next or bring in? We need a new goalkeeper. Daryl, I don't. I like Robert Sanchez. I'm the one person like I've been singing, praising Sanchez since day one. I like Sanchez. I think he's a very good player. Does he have errors? Obviously, I'm not going to say he doesn't make errors as a goalkeeper, but his passing ability is remarkable. His shot saving is remarkable. We saw it in the Club World Cup, especially in the final against PSG. The man can ping a ball very, very well. The problem that he's been dealing with for the last two seasons at Chelsea, not only were there different managers, so different tactics, but we've also had so many injuries to our back line. So almost week in and week out, we had a different line. Under Poch, we literally had, I think there may have been two games that we had the same back line for back-to-back matches, which makes it very difficult. And then on top of that, we were rotating goalkeepers as well with Petrovic, with Sanchez, and then this past year he was also getting rotated. So like I said, if you give him a solid run, back him, which Enzo Maresca definitely did this past year, I think he's going to be a very good goalkeeper. I think a lot of people do harp on because of some of the errors he had that's led to goals, but you can literally look at almost any goalkeeper now in the Premier League. They make errors. It's just what happens now. When you play from the back, you play a lot of possession balls and you ping the ball back to your goalkeeper, sooner or later it's going to lead to a goal. It's unfortunate, but that's just the tactics that have been played right now. If the tactics do change at some point, maybe we do sign a different goalkeeper. I know we were in for Big Mike for AC Milan for a little bit, but it just didn't make sense. I think Sanchez is the better route. A shame for Petrovic because I think he also would have been a good goalkeeper. I think he's going to do very well moving on, which maybe we're going to be upset when we do see that happening. But overall, I think Sanchez is going to be a good goalkeeper for us. So we don't have to buy a new goalkeeper. You did ask, though, who I think we would sell for next year. I mean, next year, if we're looking at selling players, if Nico Jackson doesn't get sold, I think he does get sold next summer. I think he can still push to strive in this team. He obviously has to compete with multiple players, and he does want to play for us. So I could easily see him sticking around for one more year. If though someone comes and asks for 89 million and they up his salary, obviously he's probably on his way out then. So I would say he's probably one of the players that we're going to sell. On top of that, I could easily see, and I hate to say it, but I could see Cucurella leaving next year too, just because I could easily see Real Madrid, Barcelona trying to buy him. I don't want to see him leave Chelsea, but I would not be surprised. Being a Spaniard, I could easily see one of those two clubs trying to come in and take him. And for him, I'm guaranteeing you that is a club that he could easily be like, yes, I want to leave. I want to go there. And Chelsea would get the money for him. So I could see him leaving next year, which is why I think we bought Hato. And I think we're going to try to buy another player to, again, back up Cucurella just in case next year, if anything happens for any club, to try to buy him. Isak 100% going to Liverpool. I mean, it seems like Isak is going to Liverpool from what I've been seeing in the news. I mean, Eddie Howell says he's pretty much not going to be playing anymore. At this point, I cannot see how they turn it around for Isak. It's almost like what happened with Chelsea with Lukaku. After he had the interview and everything, it's just the fans turned on him. And therefore, again, Lukaku could have came out and scored hat trick after hat trick. Maybe the fans would have been happy with him, but the way things went down, no one wanted to see him kick a ball for Chelsea after all that. And it's the same thing with Isak. It's a shame how things went down because you saw last year how much it meant to win a trophy with Newcastle and how great of a player he can definitely be. And Newcastle obviously supported this player. They brought him up, made him play very well. It's a shame that he's trying now to force his way out to Liverpool. At the end of the day, though, I think any player has to look out for themselves. I know there's a lot of loyalty with some teams, but at the same time, if say he was injured on the last week of his contract, Newcastle just pushed him out the door anyway. So players got to look out for themselves, and I think that's what Isak's doing here because if he goes to Liverpool, he understands this is going to be a big pay raise, possibly win something along with the Premier League, Champions League, or any other trophy. They obviously increase that quite well over Newcastle, so therefore, again, it makes sense for Isak to be leaving. Visa on sorry, I missed yours of what you said about Visa. So Chelsea are doomed, brother. I don't think Chelsea are doomed. I think they're going to do quite well. Real Madrid or Barca buying Cucurella. There's no transfer rumors with Real Madrid or Barcelona buying him. I'm just saying I could easily see if he has another great year. Then you look at the World Cup coming up next summer, and Cucurella does really well in there, which I think he will do for Spain. I can easily see Real Madrid being like, hey, we want to buy that guy and try to buy him, which would make total sense. Or, like I said, Barcelona could also be in the running for buying him. And being a Spaniard, when you have, well, you don't have to be a Spaniard. I think Real Madrid and Barcelona just have this pull for that to have. They're that big of a club that any team or any player that is drawn to that, they're going to try to push that move. And like I said, it makes sense for Cucurella. I think Arsenal drop in position and finish fourth or fifth. I could easily see Arsenal finish outside the top four this season, but that's again not to knock Arsenal. It's just the top four. I think is going to be very difficult this year. They can finish in the top four, but if you're thinking about Liverpool, City, which again I think City is right there in the running to win the Premier League again with all the signings they've done. Arsenal, Chelsea, I do want to say Manchester United, which, like I said, this is a big signing for them. Sesko to come to United. I think, like I said, they're maybe missing one player. They could push for that. I would have had Newcastle, but the way the transfer window has been going for Newcastle, I don't think they're going to be able to finish in the top 4 or 5 this season. But like I said, Brighton is another team. I think some teams are going to, or some people are going to be sleeping. I think Brighton has a good opportunity to also finish quite high this season. Whether they finish in the top 5, probably not, but I do think they're a really good team this year. Aston Villa, obviously, they could push back in the top 4 too. Um, so they shouldn't have sold my goat Gallagher. You talking about Chelsea selling Gallagher? That I still understand. I mean, I do understand it. It was obviously pure profit for Chelsea to sell Gallagher, and then obviously we got João Felix, who now is off to the Saudi Arabia League. So it was a very confusing transfer to say the least. But I don't know if Gallagher would have fit into Enzo Maresca's system. So, like I said, it probably made sense for us to sell him. Be, when you think about what Enzo Maresca does in the midfield, again, it's Moise Caicedo, Enzo, and Cole Palmer. Those 3 guys are typically in the midfield. So where are you going to put Gallagher? Are you going to put Gallagher over Enzo Fernandez? I don't think so. Yes, he gives us depth, but in the meantime, I think Enzo Fernandez definitely, again, holds that position for the most part. If you're on YouTube, by the way, you can comment in here. I'll read your comments too. So just a heads up. You have no one else. I'm not sure who we don't have as no one else for who that would be. If you're talking about injuries here, Fofana can't stay fit. Yeah, I mean, that is a big question mark. Wesley Fofana, he obviously hasn't played a full season in how many seasons? It's still remarkable that we played 80 million for him after a big injury that he did have. If he can stay fully fit, he is a ridiculous center back. And I hope this is the season that happens. But I mean, I would not be surprised if he gets hurt in week 1. Not that I hope it happens, but just the way his injury history is gone, it seems like once he finally starts to have a good few games or a few good runs, that injury just pops up. And I'm not sure it's because it's too many minutes or too many matches or what happens, or it's just a freak injury that keeps him out each and every time. Liverpool, 100 points, then whatever happens below that. I have a hard time believing Liverpool break the 100-point barrier because Liverpool right now, too, I mean, we can talk about Liverpool. They do not have much depth in their center back position. Kanate and Virgil van Dijk really is all they have. There's obviously, I mean, blanking on Joe Gomez and there's one other player, but really they don't have any depth in their back line. Yes, they just bought a few players, but if they pick up an injury to either of those players, they would have a hard time recuperating because those 2 guys, Konate and Virgil van Dijk, are massive for their back line. It's like with Arsenal, Saliba and Gabriel, they're both massive. The midfield, they're set solid. Their attacking third obviously set solid with all the players they just brought in. But like I said, Liverpool, their defense is very lacking any depth. So that could be their biggest issue because going into the season, with there's a lot of games coming up, especially with the Champions League and then the Premier League, and then just later on when there's multiple games happening, they could have a little hard time during that point. So 100 points seems like that might be a little difficult for Liverpool. What place do you think United get if they get Baliba and Donnarumma? If they get Donnarumma and Baliba, I do think they finish in the top four. Though I mean, those two signings by themselves could even make United title contender, which again, a week or two ago saying that just seems ridiculous. But if they brought both those players in, they literally just solidified almost their entire starting 11 for the most part, and they'd be very difficult to beat. Do I think they get both those guys? I don't think so, but we will see. Maguire has come in since getting his captaincy stripped. Fofana was signed injured, and I swear he's still injured. Yeah. I mean, oh, man. Yeah, Maguire was definitely a better signing. I mean, due to the fact that he's always available. But I mean, if you're looking at skills, Fofana was skillfully better than Maguire, but you obviously can never predict injuries, though we did buy him after a massive injury, so maybe we could have predicted that. Man, you're going to have a bounce back here. I mean, they have to have a bounce back here. There's no way they're going to finish so low again. In what 15th position, they have to have a bounce back with all the players they just signed, and they're only playing once a week unless they have a League Cup match that lines up with the league or FA. But otherwise, they're playing one match a week. This should give them plenty of time to really analyze whether team they're playing against and should help them bounce back. I mean, this happened to Chelsea 2 seasons ago where we only had one game a week. It made it so much easier for us to, again, break down teams and beat them and then start rising up. I think United can easily do that as well. Prime, Deco, or Palmer? Oh, that is a good question. Prime Deco was absolutely stunning, and that wasn't even at Chelsea. That was before that. I got to go with Deco, even though I love Palmer. Palmer maybe could surpass Deco, but a Prime Deco is just absolutely brilliant. So I got to go with him for now. But future-wise, maybe Palmer can easily pass him up. Okay, I don't know. I mean, wait, sorry. Okay, I don't mean that. I mean relatively good year, like top six. Yeah, I mean, like I said, United could easily, I think, finish even so. Say United don't get Donnarumma, they don't get Baliba. I still think they can finish in the top six if they sign those two other players. They can then push into the title race for the most part. Just because, like I said, I think people are giving Ruben no credit. And then again, he shouldn't probably get too much credit for last year, but how poorly United was. He came into a dumpster fire at United. No manager would have done well. Maybe a few managers could have turned around a little bit, but it would have taken a lot. There was a lot of dead wood at the club. There still is a lot of dead wood at the club, and he's trying to implement his tactics. They picked up some injuries, and some of the players that they had just weren't out working out. I think at one point, if I'm not mistaken, too, Hoyland Xerxes was injured, and I'm trying to think who they actually had their starting number 9 or their striker. So they didn't even have a proper number 9 at some point, too. So, like I said, they had some major issues going on. This year, they have a fully fit squad. They brought in and recuperated and made their team better. So, like I said, it's very difficult to see how they would struggle even more for the most part. So, like I said, I think they can easily go a little bit higher. So let's see here. Let me just see here. United will not improve at all without a progressing midfielder like Baliba. So I think they can still progress. I mean, how poorly they did last year, I think anything they do with all the signings. So here's the thing. I was talking to my buddy about this, about how they don't have a proper CDM, which again, I still think they need. But because they signed Mbomo and Cunha, those two guys by themselves, they're going to make a huge difference for ball retention for United. So there's going to be a lot of games where United is just going to be in possession. They're not going to have to worry about constantly defending as much because they're going to have their foot on the gas pedal, which is going to make a huge difference. You don't need a proper CDM most of the time when you're playing teams like that. So if you're playing a lower club team like a Burnley, like your Leeds, like I'm just trying to think, West Ham, name a few teams, they will again be more pressing into their attacking third in their box. So therefore, they're going to facilitate the ball around Bruno and Bomo, Cunha, who's ever up top, Sesko, Hoyland, Xerxes, whoever it is. Then you got Ahmad. You're looking at possibly some of their center backs pushing up as well. So their CDM doesn't make a huge difference on those games. It's the bigger games against like City, like Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea. They're going to need someone on there, which is where obviously they would struggle. But I think Ugarte could still help them kind of get into those games and maybe get a point or two here and there. So, like I said, believe is not the end of the line. If they can't get him, it's not going to ruin their season. It obviously is going to improve their season if they get Baliba coming in, but I wouldn't be too worried if I was a United fan if they don't sign him. Chelsea don't reach top four. I mean, I think they have the capability of reaching top four. You look at their depth, they're pretty good pretty much everywhere around, minus now their center backs. I thought for sure Levy Cole was going to play all 38 matches this season. So the fact that he's not going to be able to play probably 10, if that, so that's going to be a little difficult. But otherwise, you look at our squad, we're pretty much set in every position. I think this year with João Pedro, with Liam Delap, we're going to do quite well with the attacking third. I think those two guys are going to score quite a few goals for us. Cole Palmer's obviously going to be feeding those guys balls day in and day out for the most part. Pedro Neto, I think people are sleeping on how good of a player he is as a winger. So therefore, like I said, I think those guys by themselves are going to really help Chelsea score a lot of goals. Caicedo is a phenomenal CDM. Enzo Fernandez is probably one of the best midfielders, though he doesn't get credit for it. And then, like I said, we have Reece James fully fit. We have Cucurella. So you look at most of these. Oh, thanks, Sonny, by the way. Thanks for the flowers. So you look at some of these guys that we have. Chelsea have some of the top-notch players. Reece James, I think, is arguably the best right back. Cucurella is one of the best, if not the best, left back in the entire world. Maybe I'm biased on that, but I think he is. Moise Caicedo is probably the best CDM, or if not second, behind Rodri. But we don't know how good Rodri is going to be after coming back from this injury. Caicedo isn't that good either. I don't know, Matthew. I don't know if you've seen Caicedo's stats, but the man is ridiculous. Watch Chelsea. Just watch Chelsea play for a couple of matches. You will see how good Caicedo is. He maybe last season, I think the lowest rating he got was a 7.5 out of 10, if I'm not mistaken. Otherwise, he put in a 10 out of 10 performance or 8 or 9 performance each and every match. Like, the guy goes under the radar for how good he is. He doesn't score goals, but he's a CDM. He shouldn't be scoring goals. He literally shuts down the midfield. He literally bossed PSG, and therefore, again, he's a guy that I'm happy if maybe he doesn't get the credit for how good he is. Maybe he needs a better social media group to push how good he is. But like I said, I'm fine with he doesn't get all the credentials because teams come in thinking they can beat Chelsea and just absolutely blow us past us in the midfield. Then they have to go against Caicedo, and he pretty much shuts everything down. Cucurella is not the best, bro. I mean, if you look at what Cucurella's done in the last, 2.5 years, he would arguably be the best left back in the entire world. You look at what he's done for Spain, you look what he's done for Chelsea, the multiple trophies he's lifted. He's probably one of the best left backs. But like I said, I could see maybe one or two players over him, but otherwise he's right there. Caicedo, Ecuador is cooking something. Yeah, I mean, Ecuador is definitely a team that could easily do some damage in the upcoming seasons or upcoming years for international play. I think they're a really good team. Just, again, they have to really gel for the most part. I think that's been an issue for Ecuador multiple seasons. But was Valencia? Sorry, I'm making my mistake here, Kevin. But was Valencia? Did he play for Ecuador? I guess I could just Google search that. But I thought when he played, they had some good players as well at that point, which is, again, obviously like 10 years ago for the most part, which is dating me a little bit. But they've had their highs and lows, Ecuador, and I think again they're going to this high again with some of the players that they have. Can I quickly hear your opinions on Newcastle's awful window? I mean, yeah, I can just say they've only signed two players. They signed Alanga and Ramsdale. That's why they've been having a terrible window. They definitely need more players. Do they have the players right now that can help them win games? Yes, but if they don't sign anyone else, there's no way that Newcastle can finish in the top half of the table. Like, they don't have the depth to compete with everyone. Every team around them has been buying players to get better. Newcastle really have not bought anyone, and they're about to lose their best striker, their best player. That's a huge blow for Newcastle. Do I think they can still bring another player? Yes, but it seems like Nico Jackson might be one of the players, and not that I'm going to harp on how bad he can be because he's still a good player, but he's the levels below Isak, and therefore, again, Newcastle are probably going to struggle to score goals next season. Defensively-wise, they should still be pretty good. I think defensively-wise, they're still a really good team, but if they're not going to score goals, they're going to have a hard time, obviously, winning games. So that's why we're thinking that for the most part. But otherwise, like I said, anything up here, I mean, I know we've talked about for the most part. And sorry if you're on YouTube, you can't see the box, which I still don't know how to put it up there for the most part. I guess if I hit edit, does that do anything? No, that doesn't change anything for YouTube. But anyways, yeah. Um, just looking here, what anyone else said here. What makes you think the performance the entire season? Sonny, Three Roses. Thanks again, Sonny, by the way. All right. Wouldn't want Jackson in. Yeah, I mean, not gonna lie, Lewis. I if I was Newcastle, I wouldn't want Jackson in either. And one of the reasons why I wouldn't want Jackson at Newcastle, yes, he can play as a striker, but he prefers to play out on the left wing. And you obviously have Anthony Gordon on the left wing, so it wouldn't make sense really to bring in Jackson because he's in the always I don't know why I can't say this word. He's always going to push or drift into that left side, and therefore, again, he's going to be where Anthony Gordon is now. Anthony Gordon can obviously play in that middle then too, so maybe that does overlap, and maybe that's actually better for them. Now I'm thinking about it, that actually wouldn't be a bad thing for Anthony Gordon because he's a very good player. I do like Anthony Gordon, but I think he still would not really link up play too well. Wouldn't want Jackson either. Gonzalo Ramirez or Openda. I mean, are they for sale? That's I have no idea if those guys are for sale. I think Newcastle really they've gone down their list. They're now on their sixth or seventh option who they want to sign this window, and that's never a good thing for a team when you're that far down your list because you first start with the teams or players that you want to bring your team that really do fit the system. Because once you start getting lower, yes, those players can come in and still play well, but now you really have to change your system or make them adapt to the system, which can really take some time. And as a striker, maybe it doesn't take as long as say a midfielder, but it still takes time. And therefore, like I said, that could definitely be a major blow in the early part of the season. And Newcastle do lose a few games like that. That can make a huge difference for the most part. Tottenham, if they get a left winger, could get a trophy. I mean, that's possible, but I think Tottenham definitely need a few different other players now, especially with their injuries. Um, they also need a right winger too because they don't have anyone, or I guess Brandon Johnson they have, but Kulusevski's out as of right now. Solanke might be out for the first week. I'm trying to think who they could actually bring in for the most part. So Tottenham do need to sign a few different players yet if they want to compete for anything this year. Midfield wise, I think they're pretty good. I think overall, Bizuma, Bentacore, wow, why am I blanking on the other guy for midfield for Tottenham right now? But the midfield's pretty good. And defense wise, if they can stay healthy, they're still a good team. Overall, though, Newcastle should drop that 80 million for Jackson. I'm assuming Gregor, you're also a Chelsea fan because yeah, if they drop 80 million for Nico Jackson, he can go if he wants to. But I do still want to see Nico Jackson still play at Chelsea. How are we, lad? Doing well, Marco. How about yourself? Players are choosing money over football quality. I mean, that is part of it right now, Lewis, and it's a shame because I mean, I'm going to age myself a little bit, but watching the early 2000s, there were plenty of players that played for the badge, that played for the club, didn't care so much about the money, but at the same time, maybe they did that because the money wasn't there. Like players making 300,000 a week still baffles my mind that they make that much a week for kicking a ball around. Now, do I love watching them play? Yes, but like you said, it does make players almost kind of chase the bag. Jane Sancho, I think, is one of those players even though he did well at Chelsea this past season, the guys, once they sign a big contract, there's no reason for them to really try too much. And they do then lack the ability to constantly continue on. And United have done such a poor job of signing players on big contracts. Do I think some of those players can still keep playing? Yes, but you're making it very difficult for other players then that do play well because they expect to get the same amount because they're putting the effort in. And now you've really set the bar too high. And this is why Chelsea, I don't think, get the credit that they should get because once the new owners came in, they cleared everything out. Minus, I understand, they bought Raheem Sterling, they bought Koulibaly and Aubameyang. They put him on high wages, but that was literally because we didn't have anyone to negotiate for us. So we just bought players. After that, though, we've been buying players, putting them on long contracts for 100,000, 80,000, whatever it is, lower wages. So therefore, again, we can constantly build up. So again, if the player's playing well, it's hey, like let's up this, let's bring it up to 120, let's bring it up to 150, 200, whatever it is. But at the same time, then allows us to sell those players a lot easier as well because other teams want to come in and tap in and say, hey, we'll pay you 200 a week, and therefore, again, we can sell those players a lot easier. So again, not that it's exactly what you're asking, but that's what I was going to ramble into for the most part. Kudus. Oh yeah, that's who. Okay, I was trying to think who they had. That's right. They signed him, Muhammad Kudus. So he's an absolute gem of a signing for Tottenham. I do think he's doing very very well under Thomas Frank. I think he's a great player in general, and I know he did have his struggles last year with West Ham, but it's West Ham. I think West Ham were a team that were a lower quality players around him. Do they have some good players in their squad? Yes, Jared Bowen obviously is a great player, just to name one. And there's other players there too. But him going from there to now going to Tottenham, almost a starting 11 is a massive upgrade. So therefore, again, he should elevate to that skill set, and therefore he's already a good player. So I think he's be a very good player for Tottenham. Spurs need an attacking midfielder. Dewsbury Hall could have been great for them, but he's gone to Everton. I mean, yeah, that was, if I'm trying to think now, was that before Madison got hurt though? Like here we go and all that one final, because yeah, that would have made a perfect signing for Tottenham, and we could have easily put a higher amount on for him. But it is a shame what happened to James Madison. Not that I ever hope for any injuries or anything, but yeah, they definitely need someone now because he tore his ACL, if I'm not mistaken. So he's out for same amount, probably like Levy Cole. But the thing with Madison is that the same knee that he hurt last year. So this is back-to-back knee injuries. It may take him longer, or this might be possibly the end for him. And I hope it's not. But him being a little bit older, it might be very difficult for Madison to fully recoup and come back. And like I said, he may not even be the player that he used to be, which he was a phenomenal player. But he's picked up so many injuries through the years. Even at Leicester, he had some injuries, and now obviously at Tottenham, he's picked up injuries. So again, it's a shame for the player. Um, but yeah, I do agree that they do need an attacking mid, by the way, Gregory. Low key, just commenting and watching this because I'm isolated and need connection. Okay, well, you can hang out here. We do lives all the time, buddy. So we talk football. So hopefully you're a fan of football. If not, maybe you'll become a Chelsea fan. It's the best team in London. Some people will disagree with that, but they are the best team for the most part. Anyways, so Tottenham, though, since we were just talking about that, I think Tottenham still need to sign some players. The only thing I don't know who's fully in the market, who they can buy, because they do need someone that's going to be like a leader for them. Losing Heung-min Son was a big, I shouldn't say big blow, because it was time for him to go. Again, losing Madison, he was probably going to be the captain. Romero, I'm not saying he's going to be fully fit all the time. So therefore, again, if he gets injured, they have to pass the captaincy on to someone else. So Kudos maybe, but he seems like he could be a wild card if he was the captain itself then. But otherwise, we'll see what happens for the most part. Let me see here. All right. We've been doing this for almost an hour. So no Levy Cowell, no top four, no trophies. I mean, I think we can still win a few trophies, even with Cowell being out hurt, because like I said, we have depth. We have Hato, who again we just signed, who can play a position. I think Mark Gahey, we also go and buy him. I would not be surprised if Chelsea, like come tomorrow in the news, we have put a bid in for him. I think Crystal Palace, if we put a bid in as soon as possible, it gives Crystal Palace plenty of time to then to go and buy another player, use those funds to again bring someone else in. And he is a Chelsea Academy player, so it makes sense that he would come back to Chelsea, even though Liverpool obviously are in negotiations with him as well. It just makes more sense for him to come back. That's me being just a little biased probably for that. But he was playing with Trevor Chalobah. So again, he knows some of these players at Chelsea. So it'd be a better fit for him. Yes, he's a right-footed player that plays on the left side. I don't think that makes a huge difference. I think he's still a great CB. And again, if we do switch to a back three, he can play that position as well. And he can also then shift to the right if we need to at some point. Not that that's where he wants to play too much. I think adding Xavi Simmons to the team will really help us in case Palmer is struggling to create. I think, oh, hold on. I think Xavi Simmons is a phenomenal sign for us if we can get him. And I'm going to get a drink of water here real quick. And the reason why I think Xavi Simmons is a great signing for us because it allows us to do different tactics. So if we, yeah, like you said, if Cole Palmer's having a bad day, then yes, we don't have to rely on Cole Palmer. But I think that's what also Pedro Neto brings, João Pedro, Liam Delop even. I don't know, assuming we're selling Nkuku, but I would say Nkuku can also offer that. But if we bring in Xavi Simmons, we can then also then play with almost 2 10s if we want to at some point. So that could also change our tactics up. So whether we do some type of different formation, like a box in the midfield itself. So you're looking at Enzo and Caicedo here, Xavi Simmons, and then also Cole Palmer, and then Liam Delop or João Pedro right there. That makes a lot of sense in my mind to do that at some point as well, because that is going to be very creative for us. And it's going to be very difficult for teams to actually break that down. And then again, if you're going off the box here, if we're looking at tactics a little bit, you then pushing Cucurella up into this area as well. So now we can actually front load the attacking even more. Or Reece James, I mean, it doesn't matter, right or left side, we can attack into that more. And we can also throw another player into the midfield. So whether we do is Santos with that, or we add in Estavio out on the wing too. So again, we can add a different player. Um, so therefore, I think it makes more sense. Why didn't Chelsea go out for Victor Osimhen? Because he would have been too high of wages. I mean, Chelsea has now like a set standard on what we're trying to do for future buys and sells and everything, and he wanted way too much for a weekly salary. I think he's on like 250, 300, if I'm not mistaken, and he could have even went for more than that. And I'm not sure with his age right now, but I think he is pushing the limit of where Chelsea want to go. And the reason why, again, they're buying younger players is because we can now build this team for almost a decade. You look at a lot of these players in 8 years, they're just going to be hitting 30 for the most part, which still seems remarkable. But if we also sell these players, there's a higher resale value for any of these younger players. So, say they're 20 right now, 22, sell them in 2, 3 years. They're just about to go into their peak years. And therefore, like I said, if any team comes in, we can say they're about to reach this peak. You're going to have to pay an extra amount for these players. And especially, it's going to be to any other Premier League team. So, that's probably why we didn't go for Victor Osimhen. And I don't know if he would have been a good signing or not for Chelsea. I think it would have been more of a locker room issue. And like I said, it made more sense for us not to go for him because obviously other clubs didn't go for him too. So it's not just Chelsea. Newcastle didn't go for him. City didn't go for him when they needed to. Liverpool didn't. So multiple teams could have went for him. And Galatasaray is like the only team that really did go for him for the most part. Let me go back just a little bit. I think I saw someone. Do you still believe Bournemouth got a chance this season? It depends, Shah. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, what I saw in the news lately, I'm going to butcher his name completely here, Zabarini, if I'm not mistaken. It seems like he might be going to PSG. If that is the case, I do think that is a big blow to Bournemouth because they obviously lost Hoyson to Real Madrid. Now they're going to lose him. Those are two big key factors that helped him last year. And I do think, like I said, they're going to be a team that will definitely struggle this coming year. So whether he stays or not, but if they lose him, that's even another big blow. And I don't think they're really bought in too many players to help them out so far. So yeah, I think they're going to struggle this upcoming year. I could see them still getting relegated. I would not be surprised. Can you give us your top six prediction, please? I mean, I'm a Chelsea fan, so bear with me on this one. Number one, Chelsea. So it's going to go Chelsea, Liverpool. Yeah, Chelsea, Liverpool, City. I had Newcastle, so I made a video a while ago, but I cannot put Newcastle from what I've been seeing as of late. So I'm gonna put Arsenal there now. So that's my top four. And then I'm probably gonna put Manchester United and then Aston Villa. But I could also see Brighton being that sixth position if I'm not mistaken. So that would be my top six for the most part. Could, I mean, any of those other teams push into the top six easily? I think Tottenham could still somehow push into there. I think, like I said, Brighton maybe push in there. Aston Villa could clearly push into that. Newcastle. So again, there's going to be plenty of teams pushing into that area. I think the top three teams, it's going to be a close race until maybe a month or two left, and then it's going to be just a two-horse race. But otherwise, I think all season long, the top is going to be very difficult. Do you think Gyökeres will flop or do good? From what I've been seeing in the friendlies, I don't think he's going to do well, but it's only friendlies and it's only been a handful of minutes. So I'm going to assume he still does well. I think Gyökeres still scores 15 goals easily this season. I think he's a guy that's just a good player and he's just still getting into the system. So I wouldn't take anything away from what we've been seeing with the friendlies for Arsenal. I think overall he can still be a good player. United 1, 2 Arsenal, 3 City, 4 Villa, 5 Villa, 6 Liverpool. Villa taking 2 positions. That's remarkable. No, I know you probably misspelled something there, but the United winning, I mean, that that would be ridiculous. I mean, like I said, some of the signs they brought in, it could possibly happen if they again sign 2 more players. That could happen. I think Romeo is a good captain for Spurs. Oh, Romero, yeah, I mean, overall, he's a good player too. Like I said, he does lose his temper a little bit, but again, some players do here and there. And like I said, he's a guy that can definitely get riled up. So maybe it's better that if he is the captain, he can go and talk to the ref. that'd be better than going up there and then picking up a card pretty quickly. I don't know if they're going to be that heavy on the cards this year as well, like they were supposed to be last year, if players go and start talking to the refs. But like I said, if Bruno Fernandez didn't have the captaincy, that man would probably get booked every single match. Challenge Cup champions, give it a rest. What are your thoughts on Jackson leaving? I think Jackson still might stay yet at Chelsea. I could see him leaving, obviously. It looks like there's been talks for him going into the Bundesliga. So if he goes to the Bundesliga, it looks like we're going to sell him for, I think, 60 million, if not 50 million, which that's still almost double. We're going to get a profit off him. I think he still wants to compete for Chelsea. And yes, we still need the depth. I think he can easily still play and get a lot of minutes for Chelsea's upcoming season, especially with Champions League, FA Cup, League Cup, and the Premier League itself. We're definitely going to have to rotate players. João Pedro, I think, is still going to have some injury issues. So again, I'm not high on him being fully fit all season long. Liam Delap, if again João Pedro does pick up some injuries, we can't just rely on Liam Delap all season long. So therefore, again, Nico Jackson makes total sense to keep him because we just sent out Mark on loan to Sunderland. So therefore, again, we definitely need to have 3 strikers. And like I said, Pedro Neto can play as a false 9. Xavi Simons could play as a false 9 if we bring him in too. So there are key players that could play in that position. But if we're thinking about strikers alone, I think having 3 makes the most sense. And I still think that even with those 3s, Jackson can still start some of those games because him and Cole Palmer have a very good link up. He's very good out on the left wing. Like he knows how to make runs. He knows how to get inside defenders' heads. End product for finishing is not fully there, but he's still a very young player. So I would hate to see him leave and then just go on and start letting another league up or playing for another team and doing very well. Because I think if we give him another season or 2, you will see how good of a player Nico Jackson actually is. We need to get into the market for another CB. I'm assuming you're talking about Chelsea for another CB. So here's my thought, maybe because you probably missed before. I think Vega has definitely a clear opportunity to now be a starter position for Chelsea. If he does want to stay, it makes sense that we wouldn't have to go in the market to buy anyone. But Mark Gahey makes sense that we do buy anyone. So let me just go here. Thoughts about United this season? We'll come back to that. If Arsenal don't sign SA, Arteta doesn't switch up his tactics to accommodate Gyökeres, we're in trouble. Yes, I do believe that. I think you probably missed it earlier. I think Arteta could be in trouble this season. Not that he will get sacked or fired at all throughout this entire season, but if nothing happens, I think at the end of the season, they almost have to part ways. I think it'll be mutual that they'll part ways because you can't go this many years, it's going to be 6 seasons now, and not win anything. I know they won the FA Cup back in 2020, but to only win the FA Cup with how much they've spent, the players that they have, like there is a core team right there that if there was a different manager, I think they would have already won the Premier League itself. It's just that Arteta can't get them over that hump. And I think another manager would have won multiple trophies as well with them. Like think of again a prime, and this is probably a bad example, but I'd say a prime Jose Mourinho at that Arsenal team, or even Arsene Wenger. If Arsene Wenger was at this club right now, managing them, I think he would have somehow won the league with them. Like you think about the players that Arsene Wenger had to deal with at the end of his career for the most part, it's nowhere near the caliber of players that they currently have right now. And like I said, he could have easily done something with this team, whereas Arteta hasn't done much with it. So they bought the players. If they bring in SA, yes, they should be winning at least something. And if they don't, then yeah, it's definitely that it's time for him to part ways. Yeah, Arteta's got all the signings he wanted. If he ends the season without a trophy, he'll be sacked. Yeah, exactly. Like, for any manager right now in the league, obviously Pep Guardiola gets any player he wants to. Like we know that for the fact. But Arteta, for the most part, has literally gotten almost every player that he has wanted, maybe minus 1 or 2 players, and it still scratches my head why he keeps going for Chelsea players. So like again, Noni doesn't make sense in my head, but again, it still probably does make sense. And I'm not going to say Arteta. He obviously knows more than I do when it comes to tactics. I'm not going to disagree with that. But to go and buy Noni, to buy, they brought in Jorginho. They did a loan for Raheem Sterling. I mean, the players that they're bringing in, it does not make sense sometimes. But they've clearly brought some other players in. I mean, Declan Rice was obviously a big upgrade for them. I think Trossard was also Arteta signing, if I'm not mistaken. And then Gyökeres right now too is a big signing. But then Saliba coming into Gabriel, they've all been good signings for them. Do you think Chelsea's signings window is over yet, or do you think we'll still go on? I mean, it's Chelsea. I feel like we're gonna buy at least one or two more players and probably sell one or two more players. We're gonna probably sell Nkuku. I would not be surprised. We're probably still pushing to sell Raheem Sterling, and I think Fulham is what was rumored that he might be going to. Chilwell as well. And so again, I know we were talking about that before. We still have Chilwell on this team. So he's another left back at some point. Not that I don't think he'll ever play for Chelsea again, which is a shame because I think he was a good player. It's just unfortunate how it went for his career at Chelsea. But like I said, those are three players we need to sell. If we sell those players, I do think we go and probably buy a smaller, when I say smaller, a younger player yet, probably like a 18, 19-year-old, and then loan them out or just put them in the academy for the most part or the U20 squad. Is going for Garnacho overkill? Sure, Chelsea has a lot of money, but come on, yeah. I mean, I think Garnacho is still a good signing. I do think he's a good signing, and like I said, the fact that any player that played for United last year, minus Bruno Fernandes, looked god awful. Like everyone looked bad. I think if we give him at least a season or two, in my opinion, it would make more sense that we go for a loan to buy on, like we did with Jadon Sancho. If that's a possibility, it makes more sense for us to do it for Garnacho because at the end of the season, if it doesn't work out, rinse your hands, say you can have him back, don't care for him. If it does work out, now we have the capability of buying the player. I think that makes the most sense. And maybe they are working on a deal for that for the most part. Because if you think about the goals he has scored for United, he scored some pretty ridiculous goals and he had some link of play very well. Has he had some terrible games? Yes, obviously. And does he go missing? Yes. But like I said, I think just because how poorly United actually was for the most part. So if we do go for him, I think he gives a run of money for Jamie Gittins. I think Pedro Neto pushes him for the most part to make him better. So like I said, it just gives us different capabilities of what these players do. And he's clearly a good player that can cut in as well. I think Jamie Gittins is more of a player that plays down, up and down the pitch, and then drives at the back or goal line for the most part. And like I said, it just bring a different mentality and a different asset for us for tactic wise. Saw someone back up here. What would they say? I think we can manage Hato, Trev, Badia Shield, and Renato Vega at the LCB until Colwell's back. Yeah, and again, Badia Shields though he's out for at least another month or two, so that's the only problem. Trevor Chalaba is an absolute perfect player. Again, I don't understand why we've tried selling this player because he can literally play in any position. We can put him he for all we know, he could probably play as a goalkeeper, but he can play right back, he can play right CB, left back. Like he can play anywhere. And then on top of that, he can play as a CDM if we really needed him to. The man is very versatile. So he makes more sense that again he can rotate Hata. And again, I'm pointing down here, but you probably can't even see the comment as of right now. But Hata also makes sense. Cucurella can play as a left CB, and Emel Gusta can play as our left back. So we definitely have different options because Tosin can play in the right channel for the most part. Fofana is still fully fit. So again, we have multiple players. So we don't have to go crazy if we don't buy any players because we have the players as of right now. So like I said, that makes sense that Chelsea maybe not buy any more players, but if we do, I wouldn't be surprised either. Let me see here. He barely hit 10 goals a season in the Bundesliga with Leipzig, attacking team, bro. Are we talking about Sesko or are we talking about Javi Simmons? Because I thought, from my understanding, I thought Sesko scored like 20 goals last season. Oh, no, 13. Okay. Well, he's only 22. So, again, I'm going to say that he has plenty of potential for the most part. And yes, it's a heavy attacking team, again, maybe he should be scoring more, but overall, I think he's going to be a good fit for United for the most part. Nintendo shirt sponsor, who says no? For Chelsea, I mean, yeah, I'm not too sure when we're going to get a sponsor for the jerseys. I mean, it would be nice to get this sponsor back. I think this is one of my favorite sponsors. I'm glad we don't have three anymore, but overall, I think we still need some type of sponsor in the jersey. It looks nice, but at the same time, it doesn't look nice. But having the nice badge right here, which I still got to get one of those at some point, will also look nice with a sponsorship on it. So, all right, I'm gonna call it a night. I think already here because I have to work in the morning. That being said, just a few news here real quick. So in case you did just join, we do live commentating. I'm not able to do the match tomorrow. What's going on, AJ Din? I'm not able with these German and Italian clubs don't want to pay large fun. So, yeah, I get it. Don't. Um, not doing live commentating tomorrow for the Bayern Leverkusen game just because I have to work. So I do apologize for that. Sunday, though, we are doing live commentating for the AC Milan game. I may jump back and forth with the Community Shield with Crystal Palace and Liverpool. I think that's another match I do want to watch. So if you do want to come here, we do live commentating for Chelsea matches. Like I said, we talk through the entire match, read comments, what's going on throughout the entire match, and just giving my in-depth tactical analysis for the most part. So if you do, like, subscribe to this channel because, like I said, we will be going live for that match. So that is it, and I'll see you in the next one.